this was budgeted and is currently in his budget, so that's why we're saying this is a savings, because we actually did spend towards the beginning of the year on this, and it was part of the budget.
Yes, this was part of this year's budget. Plan B would be to unite and realign the water, sewer, and street departments. In this, we'd be combining those three departments into a public works department, as well as moving the rolling stock and these construction crews to the Island Street city yards. This would reduce, or this would give the potential for us to be able to reduce from both a city yards office clerk position and a planner dispatcher to just one of those positions. Being that they're all in one location, we would only need one person in that area. This realignment would also realign one foreman per division. So one water, sewer, one street, one forestry, and then we also have the one on the service that was included in the first breakdown. We would then also want to realign the sewer, or the senior and lead level workers, to be 2 water and sewer and 2 street. This would end up being a reduction of 1 union employee. We also would not backfill the sewer foreman, and it would be a demotion of 1 street foreman. The budgetary savings for Plan B would be $79,000. Plan C is more of a wish list. It'd be to add a second mechanic. We currently have 1 mechanic and then 1 street maintenance worker that currently splits time with working as well as maintaining the police department's fleet. Adding a second mechanic would give us the opportunity to take care of the water and sewer equipment, as well as reduce the downtime for the police department. The budgetary cost, so not a savings here, but a budgetary cost of $74,000. My recommendations at this time would be both Plan A and Plan B, for a total of $201,000. It's not quite $209,000, but a total reduction of 1 union employee and 1 non-union employee. Additional comments to add to this is, with all of the public works staff at 1 location, our water and sewer workers would then be able to assist the current street workers with snow plowing during snow emergencies. It would allow better use of the equipment, and it would also give us a potential reduction in heavy rolling stock based off of some of the trucks that are right now currently at Hancock versus Island. We wouldn't need both because we have some trucks that sit at Island that could be used for the ones that are out on Hancock. So this is what the recommended flow chart would look like. So it's very similar, but I think it's a little more pyramided like most flow charts are, with 1 street foreman that leads down to 2 senior street maintenance, which then have street maintenance workers underneath it. So in this, the street foreman would help assign the work, and then the senior street maintenance workers would essentially run the crews. The same would be on the water and sewer foreman side. You'd have the 2 leads that could essentially run the crews. Down in the next one, this would be the addition. So right now we have the sewer foreman that's open, and so this would actually be backfilled with a construction system worker number 1. And so currently this area right here is sitting underneath 2 street foremen and 1 forestry foreman, where it would now take direction from just 2 people. Per union contract, section 8.6 on layoffs, if council decides that this is an action we want to take, we will need to inform the union at that time, and then we have to notify them at least 30 days in advance. And then they will have 2 weeks to suggest an alternative approach. And then, as you can kind of read through, so that is the reorganization that I would like to propose.
Open the, Mr. Chair, Madam Manager, do you have comments?
So the other thing we looked at, that this would be long-term savings and reduction in the rolling stock, and looking at efficiencies as we move forward. work equipment. This would also give us, as we move forward, the ability to run, in a case of a snow emergency, units more around the clock. My experience last year with snow emergencies, there were areas and periods of time where even the main routes in the city became unpassable. It's more in line with what I've seen, both Director Carr and I've seen in other communities, is you keep the main, and I think Director Bucus as well, keep the main routes, arterias open when in snow emergencies. So it would require some changes in job descriptions, cross-training between departments, but really bring under the concept that we're at one Public Works Department.
Mr. Chair. Alderman Keister.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, with the adding the extra work for the street or for the water and sewer workers, especially the union workers, how is that going to be handled? Is that going to be difficult to adding a different job classification to them, such as snowplow driving?
I believe changing of the job description would allow us to just move that into their job position. Many of them in the past have driven plow trucks for either the street department or other communities. So I don't feel it would be that big of a stretch for them to get into a 5-yard truck with a blade on it and plow the streets for us.
Okay, follow up.
Alderman Keister.
And I'm not trying to muddy waters. I just, when we start talking about union contracts and stuff and changing jobs, I mean, there could be issues there, and I just want to make sure that if we're going to go this route, that we have a smooth transition.
Well, I believe job descriptions are a part of the management decision. I believe we'd be allowed to change job descriptions as we seem fit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Madam
Alderman Clem.
Dennis, what about housing equipment? I know everything, we had built different sheds over at Island and stuff, but if we move everybody into one spot, what's that going to do for being able to house all the equipment and everything?
So we would still have our off-site locations over at Hancock, and I believe that we would be using that for our off-season gear. So right now, we would not be having a use for our paint equipment or our paver, stuff like that. And so instead of it being at Island Street where it is now, it would be put in a different location.
And one of the reasons that drove that he didn't talk about is, so our new water treatment facility that we're looking at, the design, does not have the capability to store as much equipment up at the Burchard site. We have a smaller footprint as we go forward. So we were going to have to look at where we were going to put the water equipment that's currently down at Brick anyway as we move up to that Burchard site. And that's one of the reasons why we started this discussion, really looking at how to lean the process and make it better. And we actually worked with one dispatcher for a period of, 10 to 12 days?
Yes, we had all calls forwarded to one dispatch for a while.
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, but would this make it more efficient all around? I mean, as for snow plowing, leaf pickup, everything that goes on, cemetery, grass cut, everything and all.
I don't feel this will affect the cemetery at all. I mean, our cemetery will have one cemetery caretaker, and then we hire some summer help,
Right.
some part-time or
Part-time.
yeah. So it will not affect how the grass gets cut out at the cemetery. As for leaf pickup, I mean, we're gonna try to maintain somewhat kind of straight of the job descriptions, and so the street department would be doing the bulk of the leaf, but that does not mean that there is not an opportunity there to use some of the water sewer gentlemen for it. If right now we're pretty hard and heavy with the leaves, if we needed to, we could always backfill some of those positions with some of the water and sewer workers.
Follow up. So are we saying this would make it more efficient?
Yes, I believe so. I believe with all the rolling stock and our heavy equipment that are sitting around, I believe this would make things more efficient, especially with instead of having multiple places where the citizens are going to be calling in and making requests or or complaints, it would just be one formalized local location. Everybody's there.
Okay,
Chair,
thank you.
Alderman McClathan?
you've already been operating under Plan A for a while, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Have there been any operational issues operating under Plan A?
At the very beginning, there was a little bit of trying to bring the foreman up to speed on taking care of some of the job assignments, but once they kind of felt them actually being able to take care of their entire job description, they've been able to assert themselves a little bit more.
And would it be a fair characterization to say that Plan A is basically affecting a change at kind of some of the upper levels of the departments?
Yes.
And then Plan B also impacts a foreman position, not like a construction system position or things of that nature, correct?
Yes. Option B would be a direct on a foreman.
And on option B, you've currently been operating with a sewer crew foreman position vacant and a sewer system lead receiving out-of-class pay to cover those duties, correct?
Yes.
How have operations been going under that structure?
I would have to ask Director of Utilities for that.
Okay, thank you. That's been going well. The job description of a lead worker, when the foreman is absent due to vacation, sickness, or whatever, they assume those responsibilities. So that's been taking place, and the work has been getting done. And then to also add, as far as some of the efficiencies with the street department, like doing concrete and asphalt, we also do concrete and asphalt. So if we then go and have one crew to do that, we're able to go and take care of our stuff as it relates to water and sewer. The restoration does go and would go and happen under the streets. And then in my previous community, we had one public works with water and sewer, and my staff plowed snow as well as the street department. So that is what I encountered, and it worked well in my previous community.
Chair?
Alderman McClathan?
So for both of you, under this proposal, do you believe that it's a more efficient structure that achieves some savings while not negatively impacting operations whatsoever?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay.
Chair, one more question.
Alderman Ross?
We're talking about the restructuring, okay, but what will we do with all the, you got, he's a director, you're a director, how are we gonna do that?
So we would still currently sit the way we are, where he is instructing the work of the water and sewer guys while I am instructing the work of the street department. But it also gives us the flexibility of, if he's out, I can still be there, where if I'm out, then he's there. But in the way these are all set up, they would all be direct reports to the Director of Utilities as well.
So one of the issues as we went forward, so we talked with Attorney Sosnowski, when we've had an issue that we had to correct where you cannot have, there needs to be a two-level non-union, so that if one's gone, there's always one non-union. It becomes an issue when union directs union and in that senior position for overall job assignments. Mm-hmm. There has to be one non-union here at all times. And this sets it up so that the utilities director, because he's of a licensing requirement, is still working for the licensing, but he does work ultimately for the public works director.
So, just follow up. Okay, so who would be the, should we say, top director or boss?
Public works director.
Okay.
Chair?
Alderman McClathan?
Do you have another one? On that?
No.
Okay. This is for Manager Crow and Director Bucus. Would you say, not only with our prior discussion, topic discussion, but also looking at the budget as a whole, that there's a need for pursuing efficiencies and restructuring from a funding situation?
I do.
Okay. Not to stop discussion, but I'll make a motion that we move forward with the recommendations of Plan A and B and take the appropriate steps necessary to if we need to move that to the next council meeting, make the appropriate notices and things of that nature.
So we do have a management union meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
But talking with Attorney Sosnowski, she does feel that we need to formally approve this at a council meeting, so we'll move forward.
Then I'd move it to the next council meeting with the recommendations of Plan A and B.
Second.
We have a motion made by McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Cuse to move this forward to the next scheduled council meeting. Just one more thing. At this time, we're not anticipating any other layoffs. It's just positions that are empty or not being filled. Is that correct?
I mean, we would have the reduction of either a planner dispatch or a city yards office clerk per this reorganization.
Okay, so there would be possible one layoff. All right, thank you. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll on that.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan, Ross,
Aye.
and Parker. Is absent at the moment. That passes 6-0.
Thank you, guys. Moving on to discussion number 9, discussion of ordinance amending enterprise zone.
Throw the map up real quick so everybody sees enterprise zone looks like. You should have received it in your on Friday's packet, but I'll put it up there. So, as many of you are aware, the enterprise zone actually expires here in, I'll just go back over to Stan, expires here in December of next year. We've been working with the Enterprise Committee, which I am the mayor's representative on, to put together the new enterprise zone. These are the properties that affect the city. I did send you out the map that has also goes into Joe Davies County, into Stevenson County, Lena, and Hanover. There are 5 municipalities, or 2 counties and 3 municipalities that are going to be passing ordinances as we're going forward. They have to be passed by the end of December so we can get the packages due down by the 27th of December. What you have is there's an intergovernmental agreement between all the parties. There's also an ordinance with this. There is not, they're still working on the description for this, the legal description. I'm going to grab my notebook real quick here. And then there's offsets for taxes, so I want to make sure I've got them correct here in the resolution going forward. So those offsets are set up. They are the same offsets that are in the current enterprise zone. Really the only major change that affects the city is it does set aside the city manager as the member of the enterprise zone committee, as well as one of the mayor's 3 appointments. It calls that out. And then there are 2 other mayoral appointments going forward on that. It does set up the 3-year 100% abatement for improvements for residential. A commercial property qualify for 4 years, and then an additional abatement for up to 6 years at 33%, and then industrial property a 5-year abatement at 100% with an additional 4 years at 50%. Those were the same one as in our previous enterprise zone as we went forward. And then there is a fee. It's a 0.5% fee that comes back to the enterprise committee. So you have, this is what the whole enterprise map, zone map looks like. We cannot, under the new guidelines, we cannot exceed 15 square miles. The way the enterprise zone is currently set up is we have just over 13 miles, so that gives an additional 2 square miles of growth if we have additional areas that we want to add. There are some areas within Joe Davies that were taken out because they were not used under the last enterprise zone. Lena was added in because there's some growth that wants to go forward with the ethanol plant and the grain elevator out there, as well as, if you don't know, Lena Brewery is going to be bringing on hard spirits as well, so they're going to be expanding, so they requested to grow that area within Stevenson County.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, of all the other entities that are involved with this, have they agreed to do this as well?
So tomorrow, the county board for Stevenson County and Joe Davies are meeting. They're voting on it. I am not sure where Lena is on their approval or Hanover at this point. I know that we've all been directed, or I should say asked, to have this approved by the municipalities by our second meeting in December. The other taxing bodies have all had the resolutions forward to them, and only because of the guidelines, all they have to do is pass the resolutions versus ordinances, and they all have them. And we confirmed that today during our joint review board. So,
Mr. Chair, follow-up.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, in your opinion, is this a win-win situation to have this move forward again?
it is. This is the best economic tool we have that we have for economic growth. We have seen continued economic growth and expansion, not only within the city, but within the county. And we have put in here our depressed areas. We've included and grow. One thing we did grow the downtown area within the enterprise zone. We also have the opportunity zones crossing the enterprise zone, and all of that gives us, and we've added the West Galena corridor with Lincoln Mall into this, as well as an area around the Baymont Hotel, because we have some developers that are interested in the area around the Baymont Hotel for continued growth.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson.
Council, if you tolerate me, one more question, and then my voice will probably give out anyhow. Forgive my ignorance, and I don't remember exactly how long has this enterprise zone been in effect, Manager Crowe?
What's that? 15. Well, that's our next, this enterprise zone coming up is going to be 15 years with the option to extend for 10. The last enterprise zone, I believe, was 25. The original enterprise zones in the state were given the option up to 25 with expansion out to 35. I'm not sure what the exact time on this one was.
Thank you, Manager Crowe.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Keister.
Motion to move it to the next council meeting with recommendation for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll?
I missed the second, Chair.
McClanathan.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
and Parker.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, that motion approved. Moving on to number 10, An ordinance amending Title 8 boards, commissions, and bureaus, presented by Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Mayor approached myself and Attorney Zito Cisnowski, and then Attorney Zito worked on this as well back, and concerning that there was no, if a person wasn't acting in the behalf of the city while on a board, there was no way to remove that person other than if they missed 3 meetings. So what we did was Attorney Zito and Cisnowski did some research, and they found that there are some communities that have put this ordinance together that allows the mayor to remove a member if they are not working in the best interest of the city. And I'll let Attorney Zito talk a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Manager Crowe. So ultimately, this stemmed originally, I think, from a situation where a lot of times with these volunteer boards and commissions and the such, you get a lot of absenteeism, you know. So what do you do when someone doesn't show up for meetings there? So, you know, I think that's kind of what stemmed a lot of it, is if you're putting in some mechanisms. Well, then that also then extrapolates into, well, what happens when board members sometimes heated discussions, whatever it may be, what if a board member, commission member, whatever it is, starts acting in a manner that's not appropriate, you know, lack of decorum, those sorts of things. And again, you don't have a mechanism for how to remove them. And a lot of times the statutes that provide for these types of boards, planning commissions, whatever it is, they talk about how you appoint, but they don't talk about how do you remove if someone is not acting in an appropriate manner. So given the fact that there is not a statute that delineates how to do that, us being a home rule municipality, we can then by ordinance set that mechanism there. And so we, Roxanne and I did look at other communities, particularly we looked at the city of Champaign. This is modeled after Champaign's ordinance as well, where they do the same thing to set some guidelines as to what happens, how do we remove someone if someone is not necessarily acting in the best interests of the city, not acting appropriately at meetings, a lot of missing a lot of meetings, et cetera, there. So that was the impetus for this ordinance here. And again, we modeled it after Champaign. Certainly, it's a starting point for discussion. So,
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Keister.
one question I have on this is we have at least one, if not 2 boards in the city where the members are elected, specifically the pension boards. Does this still apply to them since they were elected into position and not appointed?
So 2 of the board members within the pension are actually appointed by the mayor. And they are to represent what their role is, to respond to represent what the concerns of the city in those. The other board members are elected 2 members from the active fire and 1 from the active, 1 from retired fire, 2 from the active police, 1 from retired. So there are 2 board members that are appointed by the mayor on those pension boards.
Follow up?
Alderman Keister.
So this would affect the 2 appointed ones, but the elected ones would not be affected by this?
That's correct. The elected ones are provided by the fire and police services.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson Brescia.
thank you. Manager Crowe, as Attorney Zito pointed out, the purpose of this ordinance is to set specific guidelines. What guidelines specifically are from the Champaign ordinance?
I believe the bulk of this is, yeah, there we go. The bulk of this is sampled after Champaign, so those numbers B1, 2, 3, those are all sampled. That is all borrowed from the city of Champaign, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Couple questions for Attorney Zito here, since they're modeled after Champaign there. Has there been any instances where this is brought to any sort of litigation? Because just reading these, they leave it kind of vague as to what the parameters are. I mean, I don't see anything with current administration now, but I could potentially, reading this, mayor that's a little, kind of doesn't like this person or that person, it gives them, looks like here, just, okay, I don't not care for you this week, you're gone. Is there anything here?
I'm unaware of any case law, testing the Champaign ordinance or anything, so I'm unaware of any challenge against it at this point, to answer your question directly.
Okay, but could, reading this, I could see that. Would you be able to,
Certainly,
have
I
any
understand your
concern on
concern. So again, it's one of those situations. This language here is presented for discussion, to the extent that this council feels that, hey, we want to take some of the discretion, out or tighten it up a little bit. That's something that you guys can certainly discuss.
Chair?
Alderman McClanahan.
Go ahead. I'll defer to Alderman Glenn first.
Okay.
Alderman.
I really see us going down a slippery, slidey slope here that isn't good. The mayor has already completely removed commissions. The whole liquor commission was moved the minute she came into leadership. So she's already had the ability to do that. And you can say that's a political change. You can say whatever it is, a change. I see it as though if it opens it up to, I believe one of the things that Alderman Busker brought up was the fact that if everything isn't going your way, or if there are things going a different way with the board than you'd like to see it go, and you can just start to eliminate it. And I don't believe that's the way government is truthfully set up. That's just me.
Chair?
Alderman McClanahan.
Thank you. I look at these in kind of like a best case, not from a best case scenario, but kind of a worst case scenario, both positively and negatively. So I'm looking at this as well in that same light. On the one hand, these are appointed positions we're talking about. So if they're not elected individuals and things of that nature, there's no entitlement to that seat on the commission. On the other hand, and then let's say, if we have it right now that any mayor can appoint at some point, and then that person generally sits on until the end of their term without any recourse, I could see some shenanigans being played at the end of a mayoral term, where somebody's maybe outgoing and then tries to go ahead and appoint somebody for 4 years and basically eliminates the discretion of the next mayor for their entire term to make any of these appointments or commissions. So I see that as an argument for having some. On the other hand, I also say, well, what happens in a situation where you have a mayor who just is making wholesale changes across the board, all of them for arbitrary reasons, relatively arbitrary reasons, because there is no check and balance on it. And I'm not saying any of past or current administration. I'm just saying, let's take worst case scenario. You've got a mayor that has no reason for replacing the entire board, but just says, I'm on a power trip and I want to do it. There's no check and balance on that end too. So what I'd feel a little more comfortable in is, like you said, is up for discussion. What I'd like to see is, I don't have a problem with a mayor, because the mayor appoints these people, and these aren't, like a vested right in these seats for an X amount of period of time. If we're gonna have the ability to remove, I think there needs to be some check on that. And in that vein, council, is there anything improper by inserting some council oversight? For instance, saying that a removal can be overturned by 2/3 or whatever, a majority, 2/3, 3/4 vote of the council. Is there anything saying we can't do that?
I'm unaware of anything that would legally prohibit you from adding that sort of language.
I'd be more comfortable with this type of ordinance if there was some sort of checks and balance. Maybe that, what I said there is not the appropriate checks and balance, but I think there needs to be some check and balance.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Keister.
On the majority of all these appointments, the city council has to approve them and allow them to be on there. Well, I agree with what you're saying. Maybe we just put it so that if the mayor wants to remove them, the city council has to approve that as well. If we have to approve to put them on, maybe it's a good check for us to approve to take them off.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Ross, I saw first. Alderperson Ross?
Okay. Have we ever had anyone unruly at any of these boards where the,
Yes.
Yeah, me.
yeah.
I was one.
No, you know, unruly where the had to be asked to leave them or something like that.
Yes.
Okay, you have?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Just a minute.
And one of them wasn't Clem.
No. Okay, well, where we got there?
And so then
But-
Alderman Ross said, you know, then you have to remember that that person could possibly be in that seat for 3 to 7 years. Some of these boards are 7-year terms. So what's the mechanism in place if such an incident, like Alderman Brashaw says, takes place? What's the mechanism in place to be able to remove, just like you have a mechanism to add?
Yeah, well, there's no problem with that, you know. I'm just trying to get a better definition to what's has been written.
Mr. Chair.
And
Sorry.
I think that's what we need to do. I mean, okay, yeah, this is the first reading, should we say? But I think we need to define it better. Not reading, but strike that discussion. This is the first discussion that we're having on this, but I do truly believe that we need to define it better. And then maybe it'll be a little bit more acceptable, because right now, as I read it, I don't think it's acceptable.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Brashaw.
Thank you. A lot of you know I've been on a few boards, commissions too, as Alderman Clem has. And the one I guess I should say, maybe I misspoke, they were not discharged. They suggested that they might leave themselves, and then somebody else said, yeah, why don't you leave? And they stormed out. But sometimes you get people that are wildly disruptive or slanderous or blasphemous or threatening or wildly disruptive. And I can see why Mayor Miller thinks maybe there should be something in place. I think it's good we're having this discussion. I do agree with Peter that there should be a checks and balance if we pursue this. And maybe that would be with council approval. I did have a constituent write into me and ask some questions regarding this and whether it would be fair or not to have the council pass it. The questions were, does this also mean that a person on the fire or police pension board could be removed for disagreeing with the administration? Well, obviously that's not something I would approve of if somebody just disagreed with someone, because as you know, on the council, we disagree quite often. But the thing is we bring a collective thought process. We have to talk about every issue before we vote on it, and we're not always going to agree. This constituent also said that with the way they read it, they were worried that maybe the mayor would just remove somebody for thinking differently than the city administration. There again, I don't believe the mayor would just remove somebody for thinking differently. But because we don't want to just go out there and give maybe not just this mayor, but the next mayor someday along the road, carte blanche to just remove anybody that they don't like. That's what we kind of need to avoid that. So good thing we're having discussion tonight.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Clem.
I guess I'd have to bring a little longevity and say to you that in 13.875 years, I've never heard one mention of anybody talk about removing anybody from a committee or anything to speak of. I mean, it's never brought to us that this committee isn't doing this, or this is unruly, or this person's being a detriment to the committee or to the whole influence of the administration. So, you know, I really have some concerns with it. There's definitely what Sally says is true. There's really two ways to look at this. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Keister.
just out of curiosity, and I imagine this is for Attorney Zito, if we have to approve an appointment for a commission, or any of those, can we also say, take a vote and say, hey, you're not on there anymore?
So the appointment belongs to the mayor. So if you're saying you would want to, hypothetically, if you're saying that the mayor wants to keep their appointment there, but you want to remove the person,
Well, if the mayor came to us and said this person was unruly and stuff and we wanted to get rid of them, the council could vote to take them off if they voted to put them on, could they not?
if that's how you want to phrase this ordinance, and I think that's a direction that we could move in.
Okay.
I like Alderperson McClanathan's idea of having the council vote, but I do think that the mayor should have discretion if they are unruly, that they be suspended from any meetings until such time as the council would be able to vote on that removal. I think that would be a good check and balance to make sure everything's, if there is that situation, that everyone's safe, so. But I think, however we want to proceed, that's just a suggestion I have.
Yeah. Chair, I can,
Alderman Ross?
yeah, I can agree with Alderman McClellan, and I can agree with you. I says, it only makes good common sense. So, if you have to do a little investigation, find out why this person is being asked to be removed and brought it in front of the council, that's fine. I mean, and then there should be no questions asked, and go from there. I mean, to me, it only makes good common sense.
Alderman
I
Parker?
think listening to everybody here, we kind of all have the same opinion. I recommend that we have them look into putting some of our suggestions into a new ordinance and bring it back to us at another time.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Perhaps next committee of the whole in December?
Pardon?
Next committee of the whole in December, perhaps?
If it has to go that long, or next council meeting, whatever's appropriate.
Whichever direction the council wants to take.
Is there any reason why we can't bring us some recommendations next week? Or you've heard some of the,
No, we can have it
you
ready
can
by then.
draft some sort of counterbalance, if you will, on that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this item? See?
Yeah.
Don started out to make an official vote, I think, or official.
Yeah, that's the official motion that we rewrite the ordinance to the concerns we have next week.
And I'll
Okay.
second it.
All right, we got a motion on the floor to move this draft to the next meeting by Don Parker, seconded by Alderman Bradshaw. Alderperson Bradshaw, sorry. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one thing? Just for clarity's sake, Alderman Clem is perfectly right with, there were 4 commissioners on the Liquor Commission that were seated immediately, but not just those 4. I've actually appointed over 50 new board members to chairs and various committees. And not because of anyone of a lack in any area, but because there were that many new people that wanted to step up and fill those positions. So I actually see it as a positive thing within the community that more of our citizens want to be engaged.
And Chair,
Alderperson McClellan.
since you brought that up, weren't the vast majority, or weren't many of your appointments vacant positions?
They were either vacant or expired. Every single one was that, no other reason.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other discussion on that, we'll move to item 11, discussion of Old City Hall.
So, council tasked me 18 months ago to come up with a plan, to look at what we should do and go forward. Basically, come back within 18 months as to what we're doing with Old City Hall. So this is an outbrief of that, looking for final guidance. So, history of Old City Hall. So I've gone back through and dug through the files. In 2011, Gary Anderson went through he was an architect brought in to look at it, give me a detailed report, and I've read that report, and estimated the repair for $2.8 million for City Hall. And he found that it was good in that report for two items, office space or a City Hall. City moved out of the old building in 2012. McClure Engineering deemed the building unstructurally sound in December 2012. They estimated the cost at $3.4 million to remodel it. At that point, that cost actually increased to $4 million later on that year. So the current history. So we were tasked 18 months ago, I was tasked 18 months ago to look at it. During that time frame, I listed on CoStar Business Development website, which is a site that goes out to multiple owners. I also contacted Gary Anderson and Landmark and got some ideas as to who to contact that do historical businesses. CoStar, we took it down expired last month. We also we went forward twice for bids for demo and asbestos, just to get an idea of what the cost was. We've had 6 developers look at it, including one just last week. And then there's one that does a lot of historical restoration in Rockford right now. 2 of these firms were people that Gary Anderson recommended. All of these developers indicated the cost per square foot was too high. The other thing, there are 2 other issues that have been brought forward on this, actually 3. All of them agreed that basically all of the building's good for is office space, and we have over an abundance of office space. The other issue is, due to its location with a school and a church, they cannot receive a liquor license. So for the opportunity to use it as a restaurant or some other one, the last one was the developer talked about turning it into a distillery. It was a restaurant owner that came out of Rockford that said, hey, wanted to turn it into a distillery, but then he came out and said, hey, there's a church, there's a school's directly within the 100 feet, and I've talked very closely with Attorney Cox about this, who is the attorney for the Liquor Commission. The other issue that they have is there is no parking for this building. And to make it a hotel, make it a restaurant, that is a big holdup. Now, 2 of these developers were aware, the last 2 we've had and look at, were aware of the new historical tax credits. Goes into effect the 1st of June, gives up to $3 million for any project. They just said the cost per square foot and what they could get out of it was not a doable do. So went into it. These are pictures. Let me go back. I jumped ahead. 2. All right. So I went in with Director Carr, and I went into it. The building kind of sees the deterioration. The building has sat empty for 6 years. We can't fix the decisions that were made in 2012. We restored the longest standing freestanding Carnegie Library. We saved that by moving into here. Spent $2.4 million. We would have spent more money there. We saved one historical building going forward. So the other things you're seeing, if you look closely here, the steps, the mezzanine deck, the steps coming off the mezzanine deck are actually separating from the side. And the structural engineers that some of these developers brought in said the mezzanine deck has to come out, which reduces the amount of square foot to about 22,000 square feet, which makes this building cost to refurbish too high per square foot. The one estimate I had was $175 per square foot to refurbish the building. These are just some additional pictures. You actually see that you can't see it here, but the wall, the plaster in the walls breaking down. These are, you can actually see this is in the basement, the plaster and this underneath, and the metal is deteriorating within the basement. So the other thing we did was this last bid we have for demolition. Fisher came in at $215,276, and when we put out this last bid, we did it differently. We split it up, told them they had to bid it in, and split it up over 5 years. All right, Dennis? So this we paid back to them over a 5-year period. The initial bid we had was doing the asbestos separately last year, the asbestos separately from the demo, because they would have to remove the asbestos from this building. Again, the mezzanine deck would have to come out. The cost for asbestos removal was $350,000, and the demo was $240,000. So we reached out to Fairgram and said, all right, how should we bid it? And they said, bid it as one project. So we have 3 options. Leave as is. And the building will just disintegrate more from where it's at. The limestone is being, it's pink, it's unique limestone. Director Carr reached out to Peoria, who has the pink limestone, and in their building and said, do you want it if we take it down? And they said, no, you can keep it. You can keep it. Second option is to continue to advertise, understanding that we have excess office space, and we only have a few options to redevelop the building. And the third option is demo the building as it is. We have Fisher standing by to do the demolition upon approval. Our recommendation is we do demo it. It's safe, unsafe as we move forward. We do have black mold in the building. We have areas that are coming down, pigeons that we're having to chase out on a regular basis, sides of the building falling down. I believe that's the best way to go here, and that's our staff recommendation as we go forward. I think Director Carr has walked through it several times, and I think he would agree with me as a civil engineer on that.
Mr. Chair.
Person Keister.
All things considered, I think demolition is unfortunately, probably the best way to go. My first question would be, is there anything left in there of historical value to Freeport to be removed? I know up by the council chamber, there was a plaque there with the original dedication to the people and stuff that were in office when that building was built. Has that been removed, or is that still there, or can it be removed?
So over the last 18 months, we've been removing material throughout. We would have to do I know Director Bucas and Director Carr went through it with fine-tooth comb 2 weeks ago, and I was just in there like I said last Thursday with Director Carr, and I did not see anything. I think we've gotten everything out of it, other than us taking wood doors out. There is one table about the size of that one in there that's still up there. But
follow up, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
I hate to see an old building come down, but that building is a victim of 20-plus years neglect and improper maintenance. Well before any of us came on the council or any of us even had to be involved in this. And I'm glad to see that we are now stepping up and making plans to keep this building up and other buildings up so we don't have another albatross like that. And to quote Mr. Crutchfield, who used to sit next to me here, we've kicked this can down the road far enough. I think demolition is, I think we've gotten to the point where demolition is the only viable option.
I'll second that. If that was a motion, I second it.
Is that a motion? Move this forward to the meeting?
Yeah, I'll stick my neck out and make it as a motion that we recommend demolition.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Parker to move this ahead to the next council meeting.
Chair,
Alderman McClanathan.
just for Manager Crow, as you get back to your seat here. A couple things to point out too. I think it was in 2015. There were 2 finalists for this renovation at City Hall. It was Winter and it was Prairie Forge out of I think St. Charles area. As part of our analysis, we asked them, you know, what would it look like for repair over at the City Hall, and as part of that discussion, the figures were between 4 and 5 million during that discussion back in 2015. Subsequent to that, when we decided to go with Winter and do the renovations here, at what ended up being 2.4, it was budgeted a little less, but on that, we asked Prairie Forge to come in and say, what would it cost for you to do, take care of the dormers, to kind of take care of the roof, to stop the bleeding, to mothball the building. And during that meeting, the estimates were somewhere in between $600,000 and $700,000, at which point we said, okay, that's not a viable option with our budget just to mothball the building. The question I have for you is, on this is, you've been involved now for 18 months on this. Is there, obviously we could let this building sit for a while in the hopes that maybe someone somehow somewhere will defy the odds and change the trajectory from what you've seen on that. But realistically speaking, with your conversations with multiple developers, with your conversations with Gary Anderson, with your conversations through the listing of it, with your conversations with civil engineers, is there any realistic advantage to continuing to just do status quo at this time?
No, in fact, my discussion with Gary, was, he even saw that it only was 2 options. That was return it to be a city hall or create more office space in the city. And we can't get a developer in to do either one of those at this point. And we're moved into another historical building that is office, that is for City Hall. So I don't see any, based upon the developer we had last week I thought was the last best hope, because it was a combination of local money with a developer that did historical projects out of Rockford. And they, after looking at the building, looking at they would not, their concern was to restore it to what they wanted to do. They would need to not take the historic tax credits because, and secondly, there wasn't parking or the liquor license was a concern.
Chair.
Alderman McClanathan.
Bottom line, at this point, do you believe we've exhausted all realistic options outside of demolition for this building?
I do.
Thank you.
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Okay. Myself and Alderman Busker did take a tour of the building. And I'm not a civil engineer, but the day we did take a tour, it was raining. And it was raining more in the building than it was outside. And so I'm just saying that the destruction was there, and it was just not good at all. So I'm in favor of it coming down.
Chair.
Alderman Parker.
I voiced my opinion a few months ago, what I thought needed to be done with it, and now that it is, my question is, if we approve the bid next week, how soon can they start?
Fisher Construction was ready to start 1st of December.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
Keep in mind one thing too, at one point there was a lot of leaks in the roof, and rather than fix the roofs, they put little kiddie swimming pools up there to catch the water. and keep it from going down further and causing damage. And one of my points, and I brought this up to Mr. Anderson when he talked and never got an answer, but there's a lot of false walls and stuff in there. The estimates that we've got for the rebuild and stuff on it are based on what they see. What's gonna happen when they start tearing out those walls and see what's behind them? 'Cause I've had several tours of that building, and I'll tell you what, it is the, what is it, on the Stevenson Street side where they got the marble floor, you look underneath, and that concrete is spalled about that deep into the concrete. So, there's a lot of damage.
Yeah. Only thing I ask, and it's, if you say no, I understand, but the next group of city people to go through there, I would like to get a last tour on it before it goes down.
Me too.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Clem.
I'd just like to bring up the fact that everything we said tonight is really on target. And you brought up the last part of it, Peter, what we did in the last phases with Prairie Forge and with Winter. But I just want to bring one thing up that everybody wants to forget about, and that's that we moved out of City Hall for a reason. There was letters from the state regarding electrical issues, and there were also issues with HVAC, with air and that kind of stuff. So keep in mind, it wasn't in the best shape when we moved out of it, or we wouldn't have moved out of it. So, and there was a lot done along the line to try and keep it to the point that it was stable enough that if somebody did want to rebuild it, it could be done. But I think we're almost past those stages, so vote to move it forward.
Seeing no other discussion, will, all in favor of moving it forward to the next meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And we come to public comments. Any public comments? Tommy?
I want to tell Todd Bargo, he does a good job about that hotel thing. And I hope you find that guy, man. And you do a good job with police department, and Joey Moore, you're doing a good job with telling them about that store is coming. And when are they gonna open this summer, or what?
Sometime after the first of the year is my understanding.
Oh, it's gonna be right by South. I mean that what the place is.
My understanding, you're correct, Tommy.
Seeing no other public comment, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Motion by Parker, seconded by Keister. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ain't no.
Motion carried.
Phone calls tomorrow.